Hello, everyone, and welcome to the IHI Call Days, Call 5, Topic 4, Maximizing the Potential of Synthetic Data Generation in Healthcare Application. Before we start, let me give you a couple of reminders. All information regarding future IHI call topics is indicative and subject to change. Final information about future IHI calls will be communicated after approval by the IHI Governing Board. Also, this session is being recorded, and both the recording and the presentation slides will be published on the IHI website and on the B2Match platform. If you want to ask questions during this session, please click on the Join the Discussion button on the bottom right corner of your screen, and they will be answered at the end of this presentation. Today, I'm accompanied by my colleague Colm, Scientific Project Officer at IHI, that will guide you through the webinar topic. Colm, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Let me just start my video. Yes, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar. As Saurav said, my name is Colm Carroll, and I'm a Scientific Project Officer at IHI, and I've been following the development of this synthetic data topic. So I'll give you a brief overview of what I'm going to present in the webinar, and then I'll go into the content, obviously. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the IHI program. And this is actually quite important for you if you're thinking of putting a proposal together, because some of the high-level objectives of IHI are things you should be thinking about when you're forming a consortium and writing your proposal. Then I'll go into the topic itself, look at the challenge, why it's under IHI, the scope, what the expected outcomes and impacts are, and finally briefly on the budget. And I'll finish off my part of the webinar with some preparation tips before we move on to instructions on how to find consortium partners using our matchmaking tool. And finally, towards the end of the webinar, we will have some pitches from potential collaboration partners. And you will see that one of the themes of my presentation will be on the importance of finding good expertise for your consortium. So I think the pitches at the very end are something you should definitely stay online to watch. I'm not going to cover rules, procedures, budgets. These are very, very important elements, and because of that, we have dedicated webinars for these. So I think it is essential that if you are considering applying to this call, that you do look at the webinar both for rules and procedures, and there's a separate webinar for budgets. And you will see these webinars on our website. So next slide, please. So I'm going to start at a very high level and introduce the Innovative Health Initiative to you. And apologies if people on the line are already familiar, but I think it's very important, as I said, when you're applying, you need to bear in mind who we are, why we're launching a topic, and why such a topic should be under IHI, what the properties are of a proposal that would make it fit under IHI. In a nutshell, we are a funding agency, but we fund public-private partnership projects. And these partnership projects are partnerships between, well, we as an organization are a partnership between the European Commission, the EU, and various healthcare industry associations. You'll see on the screen there. These are representing pharmaceuticals, medtech, imaging, vaccines, biotech, and so on. These are what we call industry associations. Every project we fund is also a public-private partnership, and this is the unique point of IHI, and this is something you need to bear in mind when you're forming your consortium. Our projects are made up of organizations that are publicly funded and industry association members as well. So next slide, please. So our overarching general objectives are to harness the opportunity offered by a public-private partnership through cross-sectoral pre-competitive collaboration, run projects that aim to turn research innovation into benefit for patients. And I think you really need to think about what we mean here by real benefits for patients and society. We're not necessarily funding blue sky research, very early stage. We're funding research which will have an impact on patients, and maybe not necessarily within the project itself, but there needs to be a pathway to that impact on patients, and you have to bear this in mind when you're putting your project together. Our project should cover the entire spectrum of care, prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and especially in areas of unmet public health need. And the final point here on this bullet is that we want our Europe's healthcare industries to be globally competitive. So as a public-private partnership, it's important that the interests of the private partners are addressed so we can ensure that Europe's industries grow. So I think the most important element on this slide is the cross-sectoral. We're there to fund projects that capture the benefits of public organizations and industry private organizations. So next slide, please. And to emphasize that our funding model is built of both public and private funding as well. Our projects are therefore funded by cash contributions coming from us in the IHI office. This is European Commission money, so European taxpayers' money. And this typically goes to universities, hospitals, patient organizations, small and medium-sized enterprises, so companies can get funding, and even mid-sized companies as well. Complementing that, then, we also have contributions coming from industry associations and contributing partners. And this is mostly in terms of staff, researchers from these industry companies working alongside the publicly funded organizations. And again, we're trying to capture the benefit of the partnership to do more than can be done under other funding programs. On this slide, I mentioned here that the industry associations and contributing partners must provide at least 45% of the project's costs, and this is an eligibility criterion. If in your proposal you do not have this, you will not even get evaluated. So it is crucial that you identify industry partners, contributing partners who are willing to provide their own resources to a consortium to even get to the evaluation stage. So next slide, please. So next slide. Okay, we missed the slide out, so if you go back one. Yeah, thank you, this one. So just very briefly, and this is just to emphasize what I've already mentioned, this is the procedure for how we go from call launch through to project launch, and this is a very high level indication. So the call will be launched later in the year. When it is formally launched, it'll open for you to put together proposals. Now, I would take the opportunity already to start thinking about your proposals, start thinking about your consortium. Don't wait until the call is officially launched. What I have here under the proposal submission section is an indication of the type of consortium that we normally expect to see under IHI. And you can see here again, I've emphasized the importance of this cross-sectoral part of the partnership. So we've got private partners, contributing partners, academics, SMEs, regulators, patient groups. We normally think that a large expertise is needed to address our topic. Once the proposals are submitted, all the proposals that are eligible are then go to an evaluation stage, and I'll come on to this a little bit later, where they are scored, ranked against each other, and the most successful ones will go through to project launch. So the key takeaway from this is, again, form a consortium, a cross-sectoral consortium, different expertises to fully address the objectives of the topic text. Okay, so on the next slide, then we'll now move on to the topic itself, which, as already mentioned, is about maximizing the potential of synthetic data generation in healthcare applications. And the next slide then lists the challenge, and I guess most of you on the call are already fully aware of this challenge. That's why you're here, but let's just go through it quickly anyway. We all know that individual patient data is extremely valuable for healthcare research, but for a variety of reasons, notably privacy concerns, fully capturing this and fully using this data is often very constrained. And here synthetic data has a great potential to, to solve a lot of these problems, and therefore allow for the development of what we call in these data-driven methods, such as diagnosis, precision medicine, decision support, and so on. However, I think it's fair to say also that although there's a lot of work in synthetic data at the moment, there's still a few gaps. So, for example, it's not always clear which method is the most reliable for a particular use case. Some areas there are no methods that are available at all. And I think if we're really using this data to actually make these diagnostics or precision medicine tools and so on, we need to have reliable techniques which everyone agrees can be used for decision making, for example. And that's basically the objective of this topic. So on the next slide, I'll touch briefly on the type of expertise we like to see in a public-private collaboration. And again, so under IHI, this is the key element. So we want both public and private data owners. In other words, we want the methods that are going to be developed in this topic to be applicable to a wide variety of data, notably public and private. We want those solution developers who will then use this synthetic data to develop those tools I mentioned previously. So kind of there's an applied element to this. We want things which are practically usable, and therefore obviously you need expertise in synthetic data. And this is just a flavor of what you may need, depending on use cases you may pursue. You may want patients, you may want healthcare professionals, whatever, but think broadly, think about the key expertises you need to put a consortium together. On the next slide, then I'll just go briefly through the scope of the topic. And the first thing, and again, I think you've got this message already, put together a consortium, a public-private consortium with this cross-sectoral expertise, including the groups I mentioned already. And then this consortium should, using public and private data sets, develop or maybe further develop some methods that are already available and validate synthetic data generation methods. And they should do this for specific use cases, which are up to you as an applicant to put forward. We want these use cases to have broad applicability. So not just niche, but as broad as possible. We want them to, we're aware there's a lot of work going on in this field already, so we want these methods to address the gaps, so areas that are not currently adequately addressed. And we want them to look at fully synthetic data sets, hybrid data sets, so combinations, and then augmented data sets as well. And we're fully aware here that if we have biased data going in, maybe there's biased data coming out. So there needs to be a very, very clear understanding of potential bias that could enter into the data sets based on the work done here. So next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, what we're trying to fund here are projects slightly more on the applied side of things. So, we want these methods to be validated. In other words, we know that they're reliable and they can be used for development of reliable tools. The quality and applicability is also important, and the way we want this to be demonstrated is by developing some models in the project. And finally, and I'll come another slide on this later, we want you to make sure that the results of the project are able to be picked up by other people who may want to use them in their own research. So having a strong communication plan, strong outreach plan, making sure end users outside of the project are fully engaged is also extremely important. So on the next slide, I have the expected outcomes. Just as a reminder, outcomes are achieved in the short term after a project finishes. So the project will have its results. Those results will then translate into outcomes, and later on we'll have the impacts that we want. So on the outcomes, what we want are that researchers, and here on the researchers, I have I think of a broad grouping of researchers, so industry, academia, maybe small companies. Researchers have a kind of a toolbox of the synthetic data generation methods for specific use cases that they can then apply in their own work. They have tools as well to share pools of data for research, and also this should be an output of the project as well. They should have access to high quality synthetic data sets. So it's not just the methods, but also maybe some sets are available as well. And then for the healthcare providers industry, they can some of the models that are developed perhaps will be available, so they have a wider range of these data-driven tools to support these diagnostics and so on, as I mentioned before. On the impacts, so next slide, please. So impacts are on the longer term. As I said at the start, we want everyone who's putting a proposal together to think of the pathway to how these impacts will be realized. So we don't expect them to be done within a project, but they should be possible to be done after a project. And again, that may involve engaging other people outside the consortium. So generally, we want wider availability of interoperable synthetic data. So the tools should be able to be applied outside the consortium in other parts, so that these researchers have wider availability of data, and therefore they can use that to develop new products. We should also be able to use this data to give us a better way of understanding the behavior and challenges of patients with all these different types of complex diseases, comorbidities, and so on. And then there's also a kind of a general objective under IHI to develop more advanced analytics and artificial intelligence tools. So again, these synthetic data methodologies or the synthetic data sets should be available, so people can develop these tools, and therefore we can have better healthcare research and innovation. So next slide, please. Okay, so I already mentioned the importance of ensuring that end users outside the consortium are able to pick up the results of a project. We put a huge amount of importance on this within IHI, and it's therefore important for you to know that in your proposals, you should show that you've put a sufficient attention on this as well. So we want you to put together a dissemination, exploitation, and communication plan. And I think when you're doing this, already in the proposal, you should think of a project as a catalyst for what comes afterwards. It's not just a time-limited effort, but it's really about developing something which will then have a life of its own after the project finishes. We think perhaps you should think about reserving budget for communication, so that these other organizations after the project can pick up the results. And think about developing a business or exploitation plan. If the results need extra resources after the project finishes, you should think about where those resources are coming from already, so that we will have the impact that we want. And in particular for this topic, so I've already mentioned, encourage the uptake of the results of the project. You'll have seen that in the draft topic text. We want you to, we acknowledge there's a lot of other work going on in this field, and we know there are projects which have been funded by the European Commission in this field. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, so make sure you explore synergies with these other initiatives. So rather than duplicate what they're doing, maybe complement what they're doing. The European health data space is an important policy objective, which is coming up quite soon, so make sure that your work will align with that. And finally, there's this clause which may come into effect. We haven't finalized the topic text, as you know, but if it does, you'll have to include these elements in line with the availability, accessibility, and affordability provisions. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a quick word on the budget. And as I mentioned before, I think it's crucial that you do attend the financial webinar we have, because our budget is a little bit complex, and therefore if you're going to put a proposal together, I think it's important to understand this. So we expect a project here to have a total budget, public and private, of 20 to 24 million. And this would then be comprised of, next slide, part funded by financial contributions coming from us, 10 to 12 million, so you see about 50%. And as I mentioned before, this normally goes to academics, hospitals, small and medium-sized enterprises, and so on. And then the other half of the budget comes from the industry associations or contributing partners. So these are people, as I mentioned, who are bringing their own resources, their own staff, their own researchers to a project. And they're providing approximately 50%. As I mentioned before, the eligibility criterion is 45%, but I think from your point of view, it's best to think of this as a 50% contribution and have this little 5% as a kind of a contingency, just in case something happens at the last minute. So yeah, thank you. So the total available financial contribution from IHI for this topic is about 24 million. So if you do the maths here, we're probably going to fund 2 projects, maybe 3, depending on the budgets of those who apply. So next slide, please. So what I've done here is because the budgets are complex, I've taken the information from previous slides and put them into the table, simplified table as it would look at in your proposal. And what you do is you list all the organizations on the left-hand side of your budget table, and then you across the table, you obviously put their budgets requested. So you'll have public partners will list their costs, and then they'll request IHI funding. Industry associations, contributing partners will list their costs, and then they will put in their in-kind contributions, we call it. Okay, so this is, again, just to emphasize the importance of reaching out to industry partners so you can meet that eligibility criterion. So next slide, please. Yeah, so I think I've already mentioned, please attend the financial webinar, which is coming up, it's actually this afternoon. Okay, so I'm going to finish off with a few slides, first of all, on how to submit a proposal, how the evaluation works, and then a few tips based on our experience of running calls for quite a long time. So I'm going to start with the proposal template. Again, if you're going to apply, you'll go into this in much more detail. So this is just a high-level flavor. The proposal template is made up of several parts: Part A, Part B, and annexes. Part A is mostly administrative data, but under IHI, and this is different from under IMI, under IHI, we now ask you to put in researcher data here. And the reason I've underlined this is because it requires a little bit of time, a little bit of effort to get this. We want a little bit of information on all the researchers working in the project. So previously, perhaps under IMI, you may have attended to this more towards the end of the submission period. I think now you need to start thinking about Part A a little bit earlier. Give yourselves time to gather that information. Part B is then the bulk of the proposal. It's a PDF document, a Word document turned into PDF. And this is where you actually put your proposal. And that's divided into 3 sections: excellence, what your ideas are; impact, what the impact's going to be and how that impact will be achieved; and finally, implementation, which is the real work packages, how you're going to do what you said you're going to do. On this, I would say we have a template. It's a detailed template, and I think it's crucial that you look at this template very, very carefully. And the reason I say this is that when we come to the evaluation, this template will guide you to give the evaluators the information that they look for in the evaluation of their proposals. Okay, so if you read the template and you give the information requested, the evaluators should be able to evaluate your proposal well. There are also several annexes, which I won't go into here. Again, go to our rules and procedures webinar to understand a bit more about this. So next slide, please. Okay, so I've got a couple of slides here on evaluation criteria, and as you can see, they're quite heavy slides, but I'm not going to go through them in detail. They're just there for completeness. What I will just emphasize again is that we ask external experts to evaluate all the proposals. They use these criteria and only these criteria. So it is important for you to understand what criteria are being used for your proposal. And I'll tell you how we brief the evaluators. So this first one here, which is in bold, we ask the evaluators to look at your proposal and assess the clarity and pertinence of your objectives. And we'll ask them to make a comment on that. And then we'll ask them to what extent is your work ambitious, and to what extent does it go beyond the state of the art? And we'll ask them to write a comment on that. And we will do that all the way down through all these criteria. And then based on their comments, we will get a score, and that ends up where your ranking is. So it's crucial that when you're doing your proposal, you make sure you're addressing each of these sub-criteria and each element of these sub-criteria so the evaluators can easily do their assessment. And I'll come back again to the importance of the template. The proposal template guides you to do exactly that, to addressing each of these. So please pay attention to each point of the proposal template. You'll see the criteria also divided into the same sections as the proposal template. So excellence, impact, and on the next slide, we have implementation. So I'll leave them there. You can download the presentation later and look at those. So my next section is on tips for applicants. And as I said, this is based on a long experience of running calls mostly under IMI, but now also under IHI. And these are just, again, just the high level things which we think people sometimes miss out, or perhaps they're not immediately obvious. The first one, hopefully it is obvious, but I'll emphasize it again because it is crucial. Read all the call relevant material, especially the topic text, which is there. Now, this is a draft topic text. It is subject to change, as mentioned before, but I think the general ideas in there will probably not change. So although you should obviously revisit the topic text when the call is officially launched, you can already use this to start thinking of your ideas. You can already use it to start assembling your consortium. Okay, I've mentioned the webinars several times already. We emphasize the importance of this, which is why it's on this slide again. And on next slide, please. Yeah, so forming your consortium early is probably one of the most important things I can emphasize for this webinar. So you should be starting already. When you're doing so, and again, I've mentioned this several times again, is think public-private partnership. You may think you can put together a perfectly viable proposal addressing some of the elements of this topic based solely on publicly funded partners. However, the objectives of IHI are to form cross-sectoral partnerships and harness those partnerships to do more than can normally be done. So you need to demonstrate that in your proposal. So you should be always thinking of public-private partnership. Get those industry partners, get those cross different sectors in, pharmaceuticals, vaccines, medtech, etc. And then crucially, as you've already recognized now, to get that eligibility criteria, you need to bring in partners, bring in in-kind contributions. So I would dedicate specific time to doing this as well. Okay, I've already mentioned provide the information that the experts will want you to, will expect to see in your proposals. I will say this again, you can have brilliant ideas, you can submit a proposal with really good ideas, but if the evaluators cannot evaluate them against those criteria, you will not score well. So please do address our template correctly. And again, in terms of impact, think about impact broadly. For example, regulatory impact. If you expect to have regulatory impact, engage proper stakeholders who will help you achieve that and plan ahead. Next slide, please. Okay, so finding project partners is one of the crucial elements. So we do help you doing this, in doing this. A few tips on this. First of all, the people who are attending the IHI Call Days, attending this webinar, attending the pitching that comes later, these are people who are obviously interested in applying for this topic, and there should be your first port of call to finding partners. There is a partner search tool in the funding and tenders portal, which you can use as well. We also have national contact points for all of the states in Horizon Europe. Their job is to help you find partners. So I would definitely reach out to them if you're intending to apply. And finally, obviously, you use your own networks, I think is crucial, but also you can use our networks to find people who are also interested in applying, and the links are there. So next slide, please. I don't know whether I hand it back over to you, Sarah, or do I keep going?
Yes, thank you, Colm. Yeah, I will say a few things about the B2Match platform. So indeed, as Colm was mentioning, if you want to form your consortium, do it as early as possible, and you can make the most of the platform that we are using right now to book your meetings. So first of all, go to your profile and check that your availability is on. So make yourself available, then look for partners on the participants or the organization tab and select date, time, and attendees. You can go up to 8 per meeting and add messages. Then you send meeting requests and wait for the reply. And with this, I will thank first of all, Colm, for your contribution, and everyone for the attention. And before, and we can open the floor to the questions. So if you want to ask some questions, please type them in the chat box. And while I'm giving you a little bit of time to type in the questions, I will also remind you that this afternoon there is the last webinar of the Call 5 about the financial part of the proposal. So as Colm as well was mentioning earlier, if you're interested in how to prepare the financial part, please don't miss this webinar this afternoon, and you are still on time in time to register, so you can do it also via the platform. And also make sure that you use the marketplace to find all the project ideas that are already encoded in the platform. So you just have to go to marketplace on the main menu tab in B2Match. Just select project cooperation. Select the topic you're interested in, and then browse through the projects. You can just consult and read all the project's ideas, or you can select them to create a partnership, and so you can be early. And so in the meantime, I can see that we have a few questions. So I will read out loud the questions. The first one is from Blandine. How do you precisely define the synthetic data?
Yeah, so we haven't put a full definition in there because I think there's several definitions out there. What I should have said perhaps at the very start of the webinar is that what I've done here is I've given you a slice of an overview of what the topic text contains. The topic text is something that you will have to take yourselves and interpret and submit proposals against. We do not do interpretations for you. The reason for this is that the experts who do the evaluation will only also get the topic text, so that you the information you have, the information the evaluation experts have is exactly the same. So in the topic text, we haven't put a definition of that, so it's up to you to put forward what you would regard as synthetic data methods that would address this particular call topic.
And we have also a little addendum to this question, always from Landin, asking, I'm wondering if this is mainly applying for the numeric twin.
Numeric twin, I guess, so we also call digital twin, I assume. I mean, that's obviously something which would probably fit under this, but it's again up to you to write a proposal which will fit under the topic and which will then the evaluators will be able to evaluate favorably. So again, I can't go into interpretation of the topic in that sense, I'm afraid. So I'll.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Jérôme. If I understand the in-kind contribution requirement correctly, this means that the SME can offer to provide an N man-month, declare N2 as an in-kind, and ask contribution covering 100% of the other half, correct? And I think that this question is for our colleague Domenico from the legal team.
Okay, thanks for the question. As you may know, in order to provide in-kind contribution, SME shall participate as contributing partner, so they need to send their application letter and their data to be included also in the proposal for sharing in-kind contribution. Of course, in-kind contribution only covers actual costs. So any actual cost which is linked to the action and can be declared as such can count as in-kind contribution. But however, in-kind contribution can be provided also by a private member, the affiliate, and in case the entity is not part of any private member of the JU or the associate or national organization, they can apply as to participate as contributing partner.
Thank you.
Maybe I can just add to that. Could you go to the slide, the additional slide I had on the simplified example budget, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so some of the language we use can be confusing, I think, if you're not familiar with IHI. So we call these members of these industry associations our industry partners quite often. We also recognize that SMEs are part of industry. There are various models for which an SME could therefore join a consortium. And if you see here on the first row under what we loosely call the public partners, because they receive public funding, we include SMEs. So an SME could ask for all their costs to be fully reimbursed within the project, in the scope of the project. Okay. An SME could also come as a member of perhaps one of the industry associations, or as Domenico said, a contributing partner, where they don't ask for any of their costs to be reimbursed and they give this as an in-kind contribution. That's in the second row here. Or they could have a hybrid where they ask for some of their costs to be paid for by IHI, and they also provide some in-kind contribution. And this would be therefore getting contributions to that 50% or 45% eligibility criterion. There are many different models, and I would really encourage you to join the financial webinar if you're interested in joining the consortium.
Thank you very much, Colm. We have another question. When the call from Hilka, when the call will be officially launched and when will be the deadline for the submission of the application?
I don't have that in front of me. Does anyone else on the line have that? It'll be after the summer, the call will be launched, and I think the deadline will be early in the new year.
Yeah, I think we have for call launch, we're basically looking at the end of July for call launch, and then in terms of when the deadline for the submission is, I think it's January 2024.
Okay, so we've given a prolonged period to help you put together a consortium. We recognize the difficulty there, so there's a long period for applications. But I wouldn't, as I said, I would not wait till official call launch before starting to think about your ideas and starting to assemble your consortium. I would do that straight away. But again, when the call is officially launched, recheck the topic text because it will have changed slightly.
Thank you very much. Also, let me remind you that the recording and the presentation slides of this webinar, as well as the other webinars of this week, are all published on the IHI website. Please attend the webinar this afternoon about how drafting the financial part. We have another question coming in from Angelo. Do you have any guideline on open sourcing the software code which is going to be developed within the project, and would this would this be a plus point for an application?
So I think in the topic text itself, as is currently drafted, we say that the code would ideally be open sourced. We don't make it compulsory. Again, the topic text is still subject to change, so I don't know where that will end up. So I think that would probably be viewed positively in the whole context. It may not be a major point, but it'd be important. And again, I think also in terms of impact, if we really want to have this impact out on a large number of organizations after the project finishes, again, having open source can sometimes do that, sometimes not. Sometimes, you know, a close where you can develop a business on top of something is also important. So you have to balance all these different aspects, open source versus maybe generating revenue to allow you to go further. As long as you explain it well in your proposal, it would be okay. In terms of methodology to open source, I think that's again up to you. You know, a lot of people will put their code in GitHub. It's probably not enough these days, but just to say that there are probably plenty of mechanisms out there to do so.
Thank you, Cole. We have one last question, always from Blandine. Will there be an in-person matchmaking session in Brussels like last year?
No, so the tool we have is the tool which Sarah just explained, where you can go there, you can upload your own information about what you're offering to a consortium, and search for other people who've uploaded their information. And then there's a communication, you can arrange meetings through it, or you can arrange meetings offline as well, obviously. So no, we're not having an in-person event. We provide this tool instead. And, you know, one reason for that is that not everyone can travel to Brussels. It advantages some people over others. So we prefer to have an online tool where everyone can take the advantage of.
Thank you very much, and this gives us the opportunity to stress one more to use the platform for the matchmaking, and do not wait for any maybe in-person event in case that this will happen or not. But you can use right away the platform to look for partners and create your consortium. So I think we don't have further questions. So I would say that coming up next, there will be the pitching session, but we are going to have a 5-minute break. So if you want to hear about the pitches, please stay online, and we will resume in 5 minutes. So I would say at 10:50 Brussels time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We will move on to the pitching session right away. So I will start introducing the first pitcher of today's session. We have Saurav Kumar Baidya, Senior Project Leader, Public-Private Partnership at Philips, who will pitch about innovative synthetic data generation to train artifact-free diverse imaging and non-imaging healthcare algorithm. Saurav, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. This is Saurav Baidya from Philips. I'm here to talk about IC data for cool things, by generating innovative synthetic data across myriad of healthcare algorithms, be it imaging, non-imaging, and whatnot. Next slide, please. Why we come up with this proposal? It's because all these algorithms that will be talking the context here, they face a tremendous challenge in the form of non-availability of large training datasets with ground truth. Even if they're available, then undocumented variability of instrumentation and procedures that lead to uncertainties, and then associated lack of validation, standardization, accuracy, and efficiency. With this proposal, we exactly target to solve that by generating persistent and transient synthetic data, including automation of validated data labeling, curation, and validation. And then we package all this in a modular framework for easy scalability, and then focusing on different benefits, starting from development time reduction till supporting even regulatory submissions as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. The technical goals, of course, high resolution spatio-temporal data generation models is at the core, touching upon different aspects. Then development and validation of AI models to simulate and generate transient and persistent synthetic data. That is also closely associated with the core part of the proposal. And then the hybrid aspect, what was also mentioned during the call topic presentation, that we have the real world personalized data, but then we augment that through generative AI and auxiliary sensor systems, resulting in enriched synthetic data set. Then the next point already I touched upon, that we package that in with a modular technology framework to better scalability, even to the possibility to extend to cloud and edge infrastructure. And of course, we target different segments of the algorithm aspects of reconstruction, segmentation, biomarker analysis, QA/QC tests, and whatnot. Of course, we plan to provide a rich tooling set focusing on consistency, correlation check, validation, and very importantly about interoperability standardization as well. And of course, we also have a plan in mind to build a public data image database also, linking to different data ecosystems, data spaces, of course, keeping things like EHDS in mind. Next slide, please. Yeah, economical impact, assurance of that much needed trustworthiness and generalization of AI-based analysis in healthcare, building of that public database. Of course, significant reduction in development time, development cost, and life cycle maintenance, etc. And of course, very importantly, the growth, especially the growth of those synthetic data generation companies. Yeah, so those are obvious economical impact. Expected duration and budget. So this is what we see as of now, the initial plan 54 months and around 15 million euro funding. Next slide, please. Partners, tentative list, but in terms of large industry, we have Philips Medical Systems, both from Netherlands and Germany. Many SMEs, including the image biomarker companies, they are interested in this proposal. And of course, not to mention lots of interest from research and technology organizations and academia. At this point in time, we specifically are looking for industry partners from pharma and medtech domain, with focus on lifestyle monitoring, lab data, EHR, and pathology. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Saurav. Coming up next, second pitcher of today is Emad Yaghmaei, Senior Consultant at YAGHMA B.V, who will pitch about trustworthy and neutral assessment of the impact of IA project. AI.
Yeah, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me well. I'm a bit out, so yeah, that's good. So who we are an SME, as a micro SME, about 10 to 12 people, who based in Delft in Netherlands. what we are working is in the different units, but one of the most important units that we are working and we are active is the digital health. So in AI health, so we are running our tools and frameworks regarding to, maybe we can go to the next slide, please, regarding to AI impact assessment. So artificial impact assessment, wherever is the data is in the basically in the health application. Of course, we do have also some other application, but particularly for a health application. So we look at the kind of the impact assessment slash risk assessment of the like medical software, medical devices, and so on and so forth, in order to make a classified tool for digital health activities to help public health organization, public health stakeholders, as well as health data processors and controller to make an informed decision and improve the AI governance in terms of digital health ecosystem regarding to ethical, legal, social aspects. So next slide, please. So basically in principle, so we look at the AI that is applicable for the health, for the whole life cycle of AI, from the data point to deployment phase, and then we look at the different values that can be at stake, at risk. So, for instance, if we look at the bias, so how we can mitigate the bias, we look at privacy, transparency, explainability of the AI system, machine learning system, or can be also some other activities like we also have a project in digital twins. They have a data, and we configure our framework towards the digital twins in order to basically make a trustworthy AI, especially for privacy, transparency, explainability. Accuracy is a bit less, but we are not looking at the output performance of the AI, more at the look at the ethical, social, and in that case, environmental doesn't apply, but okay, social and legal issues. So please go to next slide. And so this basically we support this. And how we can do it. So we have a kind of the risk assessment based framework / tool that we assess AI projects, in that case for healthcare, for their impact, and we try to compare to what we already have. Of course, we have a set of indicators related to the health, but if it needs to be configured to the new projects. So if we are running, for instance, in the risk factor of lung cancer and oncology, quite active. So in oncology, we have quite a set of basically established indicators that we can use. But other activities, we have start with a general set of indicators and then go on and then basically improve it over time and then assess it against those aspects that I mentioned, bias or privacy or transparency. And also, of course, go beyond that. So for instance, in fairness and also for transparency, we are also going to more details about different aspects of the transparency. So, and please, next slide. And how our service basically helps health-related research projects is we first start with the stakeholder mapping, or kind of the contextualizing risk assessment and impact assessment for a specific project that the case, to look at the trustworthiness of the AI, to see which stakeholder is firstly engaged, which life cycle of AI or which life cycle of the data we are talking. Are we talking about the data, or we talk about the design prep phase or development phase or deployment phase? Because if we talk about, for instance, bias, the bias maybe is more important at the data and design, but not really much present at the levels of deployment. But the same, for instance, a privacy that can be applicable for design phase maybe is different than the applicability of the privacy at the deployment phase. So that's why the next phase, which is AI impact assessment, comes. So kind of a dynamic risk assessment to update AI project for deeper insight for these different like values. Depends on, of course, the need of that project. And then we can make an oversight for sort of kind of the auditing of the AI system together with the stakeholders to understand kind of the like a value sensitive design for the socio-technical systems, but in the particular in the healthcare systems. So we provide a support for technological development more at the levels of the social, like SSH, social humanities, but with the focus, more focus on the ethical, legal, social aspects, impact, performance. So, and that is this is what we try to do, and then we have a kind of if a project have a kind of demonstrator pilot, so we generate monitoring updates showcasing evolution of the impact performance, how it's assessed, and address emerging risk. And then, of course, at the end with the analysis, we are not the legal partners to make a policy recommendation, but we can, of course, recommend policy towards how we identify risk, opportunities, potential gaps between the project performance and the trustworthy AI disclosure and regulation. So this is what we normally do. So at the end, kind of the strategy setting for the project level or policy level at the health-related project is going to be proposed by us. Yes, I think that is the next last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emad. Next speaker is Oleg Agafonov, senior researcher at DNV, who will pitch about creating trust in synthetic data for healthcare. Oleg, the floor is yours.
Good morning or afternoon, Ehrlich. Yes, first slide is loading. Could you go straight to the next slide, please? So it's a brief introduction to DNV. So we are a relatively old company, well, I would say even fairly old company. We're also a global company with about 12,000 people in more than 100 countries. We operate in a number of industries, and healthcare is spread among management system certification, supply chain, and product assurance, and software platforms and digital solutions. Could we go to the next slide, please? So more precisely, DNV's role in the healthcare lie within these domains, so quality and risk management, data sharing, harmonization, governance. We also a notified body under the EU MDR and likely to become one under the IVDR. We also certify management systems. We also look into the cybersecurity certification. We also provide the digital solutions for the healthcare sectors. So DNV Emad is in that space. So that was a very brief presentation of the company. Please welcome to visit our website to find out more. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go into the details of the synthetic data challenges, but I think what's worth mentioning is that synthetic data in healthcare, in our opinion, is used for two main use cases. Is for cases when there is a data scarcity, when there is not enough data, and for data privacy, when data can't be shared directly. And what we are looking into is providing an assurance scheme for generated synthetic data, so that people are sure that the synthetic data is fit for purpose and it's of high quality. Could you go to the next slide, please? So here you can see, yes, and regarding the assurance, so what we mean by that we need the robust quality metrics to ascertain that the data is representative, reliable, and that the utility of synthetic data will compromise that the synthetic data is fit for purpose for a specific use case. Could we go to the next slide, please? I think I'm going rather fast through my slides, and that's the last slide now. So what we can do within this space, well, we have quite a lot of expertise within the risk management and quality assurance. DNV has also expertise within the regulatory landscape. We have an ongoing project, an industrial PhD project in collaboration with Oslo University Hospital and Oslo University for the use of validation, of synthetic data for AI-based tools in healthcare. We also have an ongoing collaboration with the Cancer Registry of Norway, which collects the data on cancer. And actually, the Cancer Registry has the need to share the data, and that's why we found that the data privacy is important for synthetic data. So essentially, what we are exploring is also the mechanisms to ensure that synthetic data can't be reverse engineered to obtain any of the initial data that it has been generated with. So I think that's briefly us. And next slide, please. So we are looking into the joining the consortium, not leading the consortium, and we are looking for a role where we can explore the assurance mechanisms to support scaled use of synthetic data. So that was us very briefly. Please reach out to us if you want to chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Oleg. Next speaker is Vajira Thambawita, research scientist at the Simula Metropolitan Center for Digital Engineer. And his speech will be about DeepSynthBody, machine learning framework to address data insufficiency in the medical field. Vajira, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vajira Thambawita from Simula Metropolitan Center for Digital Engineering. So in this call, actually, we are going to introduce our project. We have tentative title DeepSynthBody machine learning framework to address the data insufficiency in the medical field. So next slide, please. Okay, actually, what main challenge we are going to solve using synthetic data is data deficiency in medical domain. So actually, why we face this data deficiency is because of privacy issues in the medical domain, and then we face real true positive cases compared to the true negative cases in the medical domain, as well as you know that we cannot do medical data annotations. We need experts. So then timely and costly data annotations. With these data limitations, at the end, we face generalizability issue when we apply machine learning or AI techniques in medical domain. Next slide, please. So as a solution, we propose, okay, we have to have some kind of common or public platform. Those who are generating synthetic data can contribute to that platform. Also, those who own synthetic data can come to that platform to get synthetic data. So we have tested a lot of synthetic data generations algorithms in medical domain. You can see here, we have tested some algorithms to convert through negative to through positive. So then we can solve that problem. So then we have tested some algorithms which can generate synthetic. For example, in the second image, you can see that it can generate synthetic polyp images for a given condition. So we can overcome the data annotation problem using those kind of algorithms, as well as you can see that we have generated realistic ECG signals using synthetic data generative models. So to overcome the privacy issues, these are real projects we have done so far, though we have that knowledge about how to use these generative models in the medical domain. So yeah, we need a common platform to build to collect these all generative models into one place and share those generative models to the end users. Next slide, please. So our main activities is we need some collaboration with data collectors. So then who can collect medical data, because anyway, we need real data to train generative models. In addition to that, we need a different kind of medical data, signals, images, videos, special type of data like fMRI. So at the end, we have to implement a user-friendly platform, which should not be a code-based something. It can be some kind of GUI-based something. So then end users easily can generate synthetic data, as well as those who are producing synthetic data can quickly publish their models in the one platform. Simply, I would say that this is some kind of Hugging Face. If you're not familiar with what is Hugging Face, you can search what is Hugging Face. It is a nice platform for contributors who develop machine learning models in other domains, especially in natural language processing. So we are looking for a similar kind of, but more advanced version of that one, especially for medical domain. Next slide, please. So as in Simula Met, actually we are a sub research institute under the main company called Simula. So we are expertise. We can provide our knowledge in machine learning, actually cryptography, scientific computing, software engineering, communication system, as well as we have our in-house supercomputing facility, which is called EX3, which we can provide some kind. We have some facility to compute large machine learning models using high-end supercomputers like NVIDIA, DGX, and Intel, AMD, all from all vendors. Yeah, next slide, please. So at the end, actually, we are looking for any collaborations with research institute, hospitals, companies, especially who can provide this industry collaboration. So this 45% collaboration, so who can provide in-kind contributions. So especially for software development and system development part. Then we are looking for other research institute as well who can provide machine learning expertise, software, data security, and all the things. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all.
Thank you very much, Vajira. The next speaker is Liam Childs, Data Science Unit Lead at the Paul Ehrlich Institute, and he will pitch about synthetic data, leveraging synthetic data for pharmacovigilance and drug safety. Liam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. My name is Liam Childs, and I work at the Paul Ehrlich Institute in Germany. I would like to pitch a project on using synthetic data to enable greater exploration of pharmacovigilance data. So for those of you who don't know, the Paul Ehrlich Institute is responsible for the approval of biomedicines and vaccines in Germany. And as part of our additional responsibilities, we collect adverse drug reaction reports from all over the country and assemble it to a very large database, which we then use to find the connection between medication and their potential adverse side effects. And so next slide, please. We believe that our current methods are really awesome and really cool, but because this is we feel that there's a lot more exploration that can be done. We'd like to take signal algorithms that can do lots of other things. For example, finding connections between reactions reported under sort of after the change in a manufacturing process, for example, or maybe reactions are confounded by seasonal variation, or maybe there are reactions that only occur when under the use of multiple drugs. And there's lots and lots of more ideas we'd very much like to explore. But the biggest problem with the data set is, of course, and why we're looking at synthetic data, is that it contains highly sensitive patient information, which means that we cannot just ask anybody else to look for this kind of, or try to develop algorithms that detect these kinds of signals, or just to explore the data in lots of different ways. And so we are kind of stuck with using our current ways. And so what we'd very much like to do is to generate synthetic data sets using machine learning methods or whatever other methods are available to be able to simulate the real data, but without having all the weaknesses of, say, anonymized data, which could potentially be brute forced and the privacy broken that way. So next slide, please. So what we will be doing, I mentioned a little bit, what we hope to be doing is to generate synthetic data from real-world pharmacovigilance data sets. We will try to simulate in this synthetic data various scenarios, and then we would like to be able to detect signals within these data sets. And of course, among that, we'd like to be able to share these synthetic data sets and with trusted partners, so we can do all of this. Next slide, please. Right, so this is, right, so what we have in-house, of course, is the large data set. And we can use this to synthesize adverse drug reaction data sets with realistic distributions of drugs and their reactions. What we also have is a lot of regulatory expertise and a regulatory perspective on everything. And of course, we have a lot of established expertise on finding signals in this data set. Next slide, please. And what we're looking for is we're actually at a very early stage in this idea. So we're quite open for anybody who would like to collaborate with us. But what I didn't write in this slide, and I'd very much like to emphasize now, is that we are not the only organization who collects large pharmacovigilance data sets. And so I think we would be able to build much more robust signal detection systems if we can test these systems on different data sets generated by different organizations. So we'd be very interested in being able to collaborate with private organizations who also do pharmacovigilance and can also generate synthetic data out of their sets, which we can then freely share with each other without worrying that we expose sensitive information. And so this would enable a much more robust collaboration with each other. One thing we don't have in-house is synthetic data experts. So we don't really know how to generate synthetic data. So we'd be very interested in people who can do this. And of course, any extra help or expertise from statisticians and signal detection experts would be really, really good. So that's pretty much it for me. So thank you very much. And I hope to hear from you in the near future.
Thank you very much, Liam. And let me thank you all the pitchers of today. Thank you for presenting your interesting projects. And let me also remind to all the attendees now online that if you're interested in this particular topic, you can find already on the marketplace 27 opportunities. So please use the platform, check on the marketplace and browse all the project ideas and hurry up in creating your consortium. Also, let me remind you that the recording of this webinar and the slides will be available on the IHI website, and that this afternoon at 2 p.m. CEST, there's going to be the webinar about the financial part of the proposal. And having said that, I wish you a pleasant morning or rest of the day. Thank you.